So this video is just a quick video on how to make a photorealistic gun from the modeling across to the unwrapping and then into the texturing. So I'm not going to go in depth on every little bit. I'm just going to explain how this gun was made and the process that I took to get there. I'll talk about UDIMs and I'll talk about a lot about the modeling and the texturing with Substance as well. So the softwares I'm going to be using for this are Substance Painter and 3ds Max, and that's about all we'll really need, so let's get into it. So one of the things that I've learnt while modelling at university is when I'm creating something that's photorealistic, it's putting in all the small details and modelling all the small details in to be as accurate as possible. So this is one of the parts that I thought it really came together, this piece, was modelling the front of the gun, the barrel of the gun. As you can see, as this plays in the background, it's just trying to get all the shape to be as accurate as possible to the reference image that I was looking at. One of the hardest parts for this project, or creating this gun for me, was creating the little dimples that went in the back, at least where the bullet comes out for the gun. And the reason for that is they're just such a strange indent and shape to get correct. I think looking back on this, probably something that would be better to do is to alpha it in later maybe, but I wanted you to be able to see that indent coming in from the front when you caught it at the right angle. But this was definitely one of the parts that I found more tricky and spent a lot longer trying to create this small detail, which on something that was maybe stylized or something like that, I wouldn't have spent so much time trying to create. But trying to make something that looks photorealistic, like I said earlier, is just trying to model all of these small details as accurately as possible. So this was another really good example of modeling all of the small details, especially with something that's photorealistic, creating all of these little bits and parts that go on the gun and not missing out on any of them. something that's really important to create that final look. And it goes the same with stylized things. So creating something that's stylized, you would want to maybe make this bigger and more prominent and cartoonish, but with something that's photorealistic, trying to make it the right size and shape and look exactly like how it should look in real life is really the key to getting this to look good. So these little details, like with the cogs and stuff, are a really key part of modeling, and I can't stress that enough. The way in which I got some of the more complex shapes, or the shapes that aren't as easy to model in 3ds Max, was by creating a plane or a box and using the cut tool to make the shape that I wanted and then fixing up the geometry afterwards. And this worked really well, and something else that to look out for as well while modeling stuff like this, and it's really important, is the shading groups. Making sure that your shading groups are all correct and look in the way that you want them throughout the whole process. Along with that, and checking for any end guns that you've modeled in there as well. Using Max's selection tools is a really important part of making this all come together in the end. So one of the things I did was model all the little screws and bolts and stuff that go onto the gun. And if you're creating something similar to what I'm creating, something mechanical, something that you could do is alpha these on later, either in ZBrush with a high poly, or even as I do later on in texture and in substance. You can alpha things like this on later. I just felt like I wanted to model this in so it was there, and it was you get a better look in the end, but that's absolutely not something that you would have to do. There's definitely better ways of doing this. So once you've got all your modeling and everything done, you've got all the details and everything that you want in there, it's really going to come down to the unwrap next. And this is going to want to be, you're going to want to get as much detail into your unwrap as possible, as much as you can get out of it at least, because with this being photorealistic, all these little details that you're going to put in with texturing and stuff like that is going to really matter later on. So something that you can do about that is UDIMs. Now if I open up the unwrap UVW, and I can show you the unwrap for this. Now this is done fairly quickly, and you could do a better job of this if you take a little bit more time. But if you unwrap your gun, you can separate it into different parts. So I can, instead of having one 4K texture, I essentially have two 4K textures to create this gun, and you can do that by doing UDIMs. Now what you want to do with a UDIM is unwrap all the parts that you would usually unwrap and have them put onto your UV tile, and then just move the parts across one UV tile space. So as you can see, the ones here have been moved over across onto the right, and if you do that, when you export the model and you put it into Substance later, you can set it to be a UDIM, and it will just allow you to paint across both tiles and texture both tiles at the same time. And what that allows you to do is put a lot more detail, and it'd be a lot less cost effective later on when you're putting it in game or an engine or wherever else you're taking it. So UDIMs are, you could use this on multiple things, but UDIMs are really good for photorealism and getting all the detail and crispness out of everything that you want with your piece by the end. Once you've got your model and it's all unwrapped and you've got your UDIMs and you've put it in Substance and everything else, texturing it from here can be really simple and straightforward. I think Substance can be quite a powerful tool for creating, especially for creating photorealistic assets. I'm not sure about stylized. Maybe if you're trying to create something more stylized, maybe more of a traditional painting in Photoshop over your UVs might be better. But Substance is an incredibly powerful tool to create photorealistic textures with a lot less effort than it has been in the past. Creating things with smart textures, for example, like the handle and the grip. This is just simply me using the aluminium material and changing the colors and the amount of times it repeats to create something that looks exactly like what I wanted it to look like. And something else that you can do in here, and you can do this in something like ZBrush, for example, is to create alphas and drop them in here in your file, which is what I did for the black label on the side and the 380 auto and the key that's carved into the side of the gun as well. These are all things that you can do within Substance, allowing you to almost skip a step, which is creating the high poly usually. And these are all just things you can do within Substance for texturing to make your gun look as realistic as possible. And then once you've got all the textures and the stuff that you want, how you're going to look, you can then go into your rendering option in Substance and get some high quality renders out of here. Now this isn't how they're going to look in game, depending on what engine you're going in. You're going to have to export your model and your textures and put them on and put them, maybe mess around with the values a little bit. But if you're just trying to create a photorealistic asset, one that's not for game development or putting in a game, then this is a really good tool to also render your photos out as well.